Hi guys, and welcome back to another Apex Racing Academy setup tutorial. Alex Simpson. We are in the Subaru Rallycross car today, and we're going to be talking a little bit about tyre pressures, how we set them up, and cambers as well. So part one of this series. In the next part we'll be talking all about what all these setup parameters do in the chassis, and in part three we'll look at the drivetrain. But let's get straight into it. Thank you very much first off for signing up and joining the Apex Racing Academy. I hope you're finding the setups useful. And yeah, if you are a member, which you are watching this video, of course, you will have a setup given to you by the coach. For example, the setup sync software should have put um, the setups already into your folder structure, so you haven't got to worry about it. And most of the hard work in terms of what I'm going to talk about today and getting the tyre pressures into the right operating range will have been taken care of by the coach, so you haven't got to do that. But there are some small tweaks that you can make that will basically make the tyre work a little bit better for you and your driving style, and that's why we'll go into a little bit of information about this today. So let me start off first by sort of explaining how a coach will necessarily find the ideal operating range. Having spoke to all of the rallycross coaches, they are adamant that the way they set these cars up, the pressures and the cambers, is that they focus solely on the asphalt parts of the circuit. And the reason that is because the gains that they can make on the dirt by having the tires optimized is so minimal that it is just not worth them doing. The time that they would lose, however, on the asphalt sections is so severe that actually they're much more targeting and getting those areas right so that they don't lose too much time. So with that in mind, the sort of setup process that they go through to find an optimal tire pressure is pretty similar to any kind of road car. So as an example, at the moment we've got this sort of working range that they like to go between, somewhere between 100 and sort of 20 kPa down to up to sort of like 130 kPa. Obviously I'm using metric here. You know you got your PSI there as well if you want to do it. Um, so with iRacing, it might be that sometimes the coach will supply you a setup with minimum pressures all round or maximum pressures all round, and in some of the road cars now, like the GT cars, they're running min pressures all round. Um, and that really is just because iRacing have not given us enough of a window to try and get the tyre into an optimal range, so that we're just stuck on running mins. But so as it stands at this point, we're season 3, 2020, and the rallycross cars, they're somewhere in the middle of the range that we've got available to us. So it does give us a bit of flexibility in terms of how we sort of set up a car to a specific circuit. Um, so what they will do, say for example, we get another build change next season, and they take the car for a bit of a spin, a few laps and whatnot, and suddenly they notice that the car handles really awful again all of a sudden on the road sections of the circuits. It may be that iRacing have tweaked the optimal place, and what they will do is they will do like a bit of a longer run, and sort of take a bit of a note into the tread remaining on the tyres. Now, obviously you've got tools available to help optimize a tyre pressure. Obviously looking at temperatures is a really useful thing. However, in iRacing, these are the last hot temperatures that you were on the circuit for. So not really useful because it doesn't give you an average over your whole run. If it was an average of your run, it'd be really useful, but they don't. So it's not very useful. Um, to use temperatures to help work out a setup and cambers and things like that, you're going to need to use a bit more of an advanced tool, maybe something like VRS, so that you can go in and actually understand what the tyre is doing as an average over the course of the lap or a course of a stint, for example. That said, iRacing do give us this tread remaining percentage, and that is an average over the course of your run. So it's basically um, what the well, it's not an sorry, it's not an average, it's just total over the course of your run. So it takes into consideration every single corner, every single straight that you do. So it gives us a real true understanding of how the car is wearing out the tires over the course of the lap, and we can make setup adjustments to get it into a more optimized place. So what we're looking for on on any sort of road racing, so that's with coaches looking at that specific area of rallycross to target the tyres. We are looking to get this inside and middle wear rate even. That means that we've got the setup of the car in absolutely the most optimized place for the circuit. I'll explain exactly why that is in just a little moment. Um, so when we get into a new build, let's say for example we take our current season setup out for a spin, iRacing have changed things again, the car feels awful. What the coaches will do, they'll come into the garage and they will look at basically this tread remaining figure. And if their tread remaining figure is really low, say 75% or something like that in the middle of the tyre, but the outside edges are like 85, and there's huge variance between the two. What that indicates to us is actually that the pressure is now far too high and the physics have been changed somewhat, and we need to run a lower pressure on the tyre so that the tyre's not ballooning out and wearing out the middle of the tyre. If, however, it's the outside of the tyre and the inside of the tyre that are wearing much, much more, that is completely the opposite, so that we're running not enough pressure and the tire is actually ballooning out on the outside edge, like when you get like a flat tire and you're wearing them out. And yeah, that means we obviously just need to add some pressure in. So this is how the drivers will just take a quick glance, see what's going on here, add some pressure to it, or take some pressure out, and get themselves into the sort of keep working it until they get themselves into an optimal range. Of course, you'll notice it on the track very, very quickly when you're heading in the right direction, because lap times will start to drop and the car will just feel a little bit better and a little bit easier to drive. And yeah, you can keep going until you get basically beyond the point where you start to slow back down, or you start to notice the mid. Say for example, you were started off too low a pressure, so you start coming up, and then suddenly this middle starts to burn out more than the inside edge there. Then you know you've gone too far and you've kind of got to dial it back a little bit, and that's how you kind of find your working range. So this is where the drivers know that this sort of 120 to 130 seems to be a pretty good range at the moment. Now, what they will do for each specific circuit is change, and each particular rallycross car as well will be a little bit different based on the weight of it and how much load it puts into the car and things like that. But for circuits that are very stop and start in on the asphalt sections, so you've got big braking zones and major sort of hairpins and things like that, those are going to tend to favor a slightly lower pressure, so they might come down into say like the 125 range or something like that. And the reason that being is it's going to give you a little bit more support. It's going to take off a little bit of wheel spin in these high acceleration zones on the rear of the car or on the front of the car. It will give you a little bit more braking stability and slightly better turning at slow speed. The opposite will occur if we're on like a high speed circuit. So those road, the asphalt corners are high speed corners, for example. We're going to need a slightly stiffer, tire with more pressure so that the tire doesn't fall over on itself or wash out through the corners. Um, uh, um, to avoid, kind of like excessive wear and things like that, and you just give a little bit more stability. So that's kind of like how we will work sort of in between our range. And a coach will have, of course, gone and taken this car and got this into what they believe to be the ideal sort of the range and the ideal sort of sweet spot for that particular circuit. But of course, every driver is a little bit different. You might be a bit more aggressive in high-speed corners or slow-speed corners, so you might need a little bit more support in those areas. So if you find the car is a little bit too much to handle in those slow speed stuff, then maybe you can come down a little bit in the on the pressures. Maybe you want a little bit more support and you find the car's a bit skittish in high speed sections, and in which case you'll come up ever so slightly on the high speed. Not much, just a click or two, and that will should get you in the kind of the right sort of keep you in the right zone, but obviously just make it a little bit easier to drive. Now, how we go about tweaking the cambers is just the same as we would do on any road course as well. It's perhaps a little bit exaggerated on a rallycross car because of the sheer camber angle that we have on them, because the suspension is so soft. But what effectively we got, I don't know if you saw there, it was 5 degrees worth of camber. So we've basically got the tyres sitting like this. I mean, I know that's not 5 degrees, but so we've got them sitting on the inside edge, predominantly on the tyre, when it's just in the kind of the garage. Same with the rear of the car as well. And the reason we kind of will do this is because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get this middle and inside wear rate absolutely even across the tyre. So this tyre the same, we want this tyre here, these two figures to be the same, these two to be the same, these two. We don't care that they're different front to back and left to right, it really doesn't matter as long as each tyre is the same. That's what we're trying to target. So when we have a lot of camber on the car, um, you'd think, well, surely we're just going to wear out the inside edge. And to a part, you will. If you've got too much, you're absolutely going to wear out that inside edge. But with these rallycross cars, as we come through, say, like a right-hand turn, all the load comes onto this left-hand side of the car. And what happens is the car rolls. So where obviously we had a tyre that was perhaps, again, it's exaggerated, think of this as the top of the car, it will actually start to roll up, and instead of being at this angle, it's going to be much more straight and standing up, and that's why we have camber, because we want the tyre and we want the car to roll onto the tyre so that it gives us a nice big large contact patch when the car is under load on that particular side. It's going to be almost impossible to get the car um, to get that contact patch perfect in every single corner. So what we try and do is we try and even out the wear rates on these two parts of the tyre, because then we know that actually we've got the kind of the largest contact patch that we can get across the whole course. Some corners obviously will be slower speed, so it will be mainly more on the inside, but still a little bit on this middle. Some will be really high speed, so it will stand the car up more and be nice bang on in the middle and on the inside edge as well, and some apart on the outside too. What we need to avoid so that we don't actually lose grip is we don't want to have so little camber that actually the car rolls over so much that we're on this outside edge. The minute we do that, we lose a lot of grip, because suddenly we're not pushing against the tarmac with the G-force, and actually we are sliding away from the corner because we have gone over the point of basically the middle here, where we're using this nice large contact patch and pushing into the ground, and we're leaning over onto the outside edge, and just we're going to basically be slipping and sliding off the circuit, wearing out the outside tire. And that's why we will never really see this outside edge figure quite the same as or we're really not interested in getting it the same as the inside or the middle. So yeah, so the tip really is on all four corners. If if you're seeing a wear rate here much higher than the middle, then we need to take more camber off, so we have less camber. If we are seeing much more wear rates in the middle, then it means that we need to add more camber onto the car. And like I say, an ideal sweet spot is to try and get these figures to match, because then we know we've got the best camber setting as an average for the circuit. I will put a little disclaimer in the fact that sometimes iRacing does prefer you to have obviously a bit of camber on the car to be able to really dig into the ground. Um, and you can be quicker over 1 or 2 laps with having a really aggressive camber on, but typically you're going to wear out the tyre are much quicker than perhaps your rivals who have set the car up, and at the end of the race they're going to be much faster than you. Of course, rallycross races are fairly short, so it probably doesn't matter too much. As long as you're not seeing considerable drop off at the end of the race, you can be a little bit more aggressive. If, however, you're doing a league that's got a bit longer races, that could be more of a problem, and so you kind of need to balance that out. And that's how you will take sort of our baseline sort of academy setups, tweak it to your driving style in terms of pressure front and back, whether you need more or less. And then, of course, if you're a bit more aggressive in some corners, you may find that the camber just needs an ever so slight little tweak based on your driving style as well. So you can perhaps go a click up or down on the camber as well, just to suit yourself a little bit more. That will increase the contact patch and decrease your lap times. Right, I hope you found this video useful. Thank you very much for signing up to the Academy. Thank you very much for watching the video. Any questions you may have, please post them on Discord, and yeah, the team will come back to you as quickly as possible. But for now, thanks again, enjoy your racing, and have some fun.